Good morning, good evening, wherever you are. Welcome to episode 26 of the Cloudcast. We're coming to you live from our massive Cloudcast studios here in Raleigh, North Carolina. This week's show is going to be a little bit different. First off, Aaron, glad to have you back at the show. It's been a little while. Hope you remember what we're doing.
Yeah, exactly. This has been my first one in a bit, and I apologize for that. It's kind of end of year, end of project craziness, but certainly happy to be back. Thank you.
Good. So, as we look out at our industry at some of the biggest, fastest growing companies, so HP, IBM, Oracle, Facebook, interesting phenomenon going on now. You've got women now in the number one or number two position. So Meg Whitman at HP, Ginny Rometty over at IBM, Safra Katz at Oracle, Sheryl Sandberg at Facebook. So this has happened in other industries where you've had strong women leaders running important companies within the industry, but this is sort of unique within the IT industry, at least to where we're starting to see this happen in more numbers. So, Aaron and I were talking about this, and not only do we try and have variety in the show, but both Aaron and I are fathers of daughters, so we're very cognizant of what it means to try and bring up intelligent girls that are curious about things. And so what we thought we'd do at this show is bring on some women that are not only incredibly bright, but making a mark in the IT industry. We wanted to talk about this a little bit. So with today's show, we've got three women who are doing some very, very interesting things in the IT world and doing it from different angles. So first off, we've got Raejeanne Skillern, Director of Cloud Computing, Marketing, and Intel. Hey, Raejeanne, how are you?
Hey, thank you for having me.
You're welcome. We've got Vanessa Alvarez, analyst with Forrester. How are you, Vanessa? Welcome back.
Thank you. Glad to be back.
And we've got Seema Jethani, Director of Product Management, recently changed over to Instratus, was previously at IBM. Seema, how are you today?
I'm doing good. Thank you for having me on the show.
You're welcome. So we'll tell folks up front, you're sort of fighting some respiratory stuff. So if you're a little under the weather or sound under the weather, apologies. We will try and keep this as less difficult for you to jump in and help out. But thank you all for being on the show today. So
hey, and Brian, this is got one addition as well. A future woman in technology here. My daughter Claire Delp, who's she's home from school sick today, and she wanted to say hey. So say hey, Claire.
Hi.
Hey. So we've all ages and all time zones represented. Excellent. Very good. We were talking about this. I'm wondering, and I'll throw this out to everybody. Do you guys, for anybody, would you guys want to offer a theory on why we're sort of seeing this shift happen within technology leadership? What's going on today that's been different than 5 years ago, 10 years ago?
I can kick it off if you'd like. This is Vanessa. I think there's a number of different things happening today. I think in the past, technology has been very male-dominated because of the fact that technology has been something that's just technology for technology's sake, right? Mm-hmm. So when you think about some of the technical leaders in the past, they've really come from technology backgrounds, right? Computer science, math, and the like. And so I think that that area, for the most part, has always been male-dominated. And today, I think the shift that we're seeing is that we're seeing the convergence of business and IT, and technology really not for technology's sake anymore, but for how it enables the business, right? And so when you take a look at it from that perspective, I feel that we have a number of women who are not only focused on technology, although I'm sure we're seeing a growing number of women in computer science and engineering, but I think we're seeing an even bigger number of women focusing on the business value of what technology brings. And so I think that's really one reason as to why we're seeing a growing number of women. Not as much as I'd like to see, but
sure.
But certainly growing.
Okay. Anybody else with thoughts or ideas?
So I think, to build on where Vanessa was going, it's a multi-year process, multi-decade process to get women into technology, right? And we've seen women come up through the business ranks or multiple disciplines and influencing business and taking over some of these highly technology focused companies. But what we've also seen is just over the past couple decades putting a major emphasis on women getting technology degrees and and the learning. And I think we're finally seeing some of those women too come up through a maturity in their career where they've made kind of a conscious decision to apply themselves to these companies. I know myself, I've been with Intel over 18 years, and it was if you'd asked me 18 years ago, would I stay with a technology company that long, I don't think I considered it, but once I got into the field and realized I could use my degree and move up, it became a very exciting place and watching this evolution. But it takes that time for to see women to rise to these ranks, and I think it's incredible now to see, like you said, take some of these major companies, some of the largest technology companies in the world, led by women, and I think that's going to change. Continue to evolve as more women, one, see it as a role model, and two, continue to invest into technology education.
Okay. Seema, you were jumping in there for a second?
Yeah, I was saying that a lot of effort has been going into mentoring women, not only by the women in the technology field, but also by the men in that area. And so when I was at IBM for several years, I saw, a lot of emphasis being put into giving the right opportunity, not giving special treatment, but making sure that the opportunities are available if the women choose to pursue the technology aspect in their career. So over time, through mentorship and opportunities being made available, I've seen several women rise up in their career and hold good leadership positions.
That's good. I think what you guys are saying is that obviously this is an evolution. It didn't just happen overnight. Although we are seeing everybody kind of coming together in some of these leadership things. The other point that I think that was interesting that Vanessa brought up is we're moving from very engineering centric. So Raejeanne at Intel, it's got to be incredibly, or at least had been for a long time, incredibly engineering centric, chip level design. And but the other thing that sort of struck me as I was doing some research on this is I think in terms of the role of technology, I think we're starting to see technology become a little more relationship centric, whether it's around the things we do with social media and social technologies, or like you mentioned, the business drivers are more front and center, where it's who do I trust as a company, who do I trust to help me sort of lead some things, and there's some value there in having different perspectives, and obviously women have a kind of a stronger sense of what are the nuances in terms of making relationships work, or how to drive that. Do you see any validity to that in terms of the change in business being driven by the technology and vice versa?
There was a recent study I read it was a Harvard Business Review, right, that talked about the most successful companies do have a percentage of women at the helm, because traditionally, if you take some of the classic stereotypes, right, men may make more rash decisions or more risk decisions or more aggressive decisions, and they were talking about that women bring in not only a broad perspective, right? And I like this thread we're on between the merging of business and technology and that perspective that gets brought in, but also their emotional approach to it. They might make some different decisions than men. So I think it was a really interesting data point too that says, hey, look, sometimes some of those traits that we've maybe thought wouldn't make women as successful in the business place are actually what are making companies successful. And then you combine that with where Vanessa was going, where you're going with this business perspective or entrepreneurial perspective or financial perspective. It just makes an incredible combination.
Absolutely. I think there's, it's not just technology, it's technology with multiple disciplines that come along with it, right? And I think that's really, I don't know if it's really just necessarily women that have it, but it's women who are bringing it to the table today. And, as Raejeanne said, this has been an ongoing, decade-long evolution, and it's only, men have dominated the field for so long because they've been so technology-focused, as opposed to today, where we see women dominating because of the multiple disciplines that they bring to the table.
Okay, well, cool. So the last thing I wanted to do with this show was sort of turn it into one that was just about what's unique about women, or how do we dispel stereotypes, or why isn't there a greater percentage. I think there's been enough kind of discussion about, is it right, is it wrong? We're not going to solve that here. The other thing I wanted to do was, you guys are all three of you are involved in sort of very, very interesting cloud computing related activities. And so I'm hoping we can kind of dive in a little bit to what you guys are doing, highlight what you're doing, and then maybe towards the end we can come back and talk about, who's inspiring you, what can other women get involved with. So if you don't mind, I'd love to jump into some of the things that you guys are working on today. So Seema and Vanessa, I'm going to start with you guys for a couple of reasons. You're both involved with an organization called Cloud Now, or Cloud Network of Women, which is focused on using technology for overall professional development of women. I know the two of you have been involved. You've done some online interviews. Can you guys talk about what that organization is, what you're doing to help make technology be more prevalent in advertising, not advertising, but promoting what you do, but how that organization is helping people?
I'll start, and then Vanessa can join me. So the organization was started by Susan, and her goal was to have a platform for women in the cloud space who are already in the cloud space and doing something in that area, but not just a networking organization. We are, there's several goals that we want to achieve. Is that, first is we try to do research, we write articles and go to various conferences. Basically, her goal is to provide a platform where women can display that, or talk about cloud and their expertise in that area. So I am involved in the organization as the leader of the technical special interest groups, and we have other special interest groups, for example, security. In 2012, we may end up forming more interest groups, or we decide that this is what these are enough for this year.
Yes, so I am very happy to be a part of this organization. I think it's one that is very much needed today. There's several women's organizations in technology out there right now, but I think what really led me to be a part of this one was that it not only focused on the role of women in technology, but really about the content and the substance that they bring, right? So when we've had articles on the site, it really highlights where the expertise of these women are, and it's not necessarily just about talking about not having enough representation in the technology world, but it's really about highlighting the areas that we focus on and highlighting some of the challenges that we're seeing in cloud computing today. So that's really what pushed me to be a part of this organization, and excited to be representing at some of the conferences next year, really focusing on the role that women will be playing going forward in the technology world.
Okay, so it's highlighting. Obviously, it's got a networking function, but it's research. It's showcasing leadership. It's showcasing opportunities for people to look into new areas together. So you realize there's a group of people out there with common interest. So that's very, very cool. Raejeanne, I want to jump over to you for a second. You're leading Intel's involvement in the Open Data Center Alliance. Big organizational attempt to take on a really big challenge. Drive standards in cloud computing, best practices, and all this is being driven by really large companies, both enterprise types companies, service provider companies. Can you give us a sense of how that effort's going, how you're involved, how Intel's involved, but more so, just what's happening in that space? It sounds very, very exciting in terms of how you're trying to bring together all this, business need with trying to align technology to it.
Yeah, I would love to talk about it because the Open Data Center Alliance is at a really interesting position or time in their development. They're 1 year in, and this organization, as you mentioned, is now over 300 of some of the world's largest enterprise IT and service provider IT who are building cloud. So it really represents the building side of cloud, the consumption side, the buy side. And Intel's role 2 years ago, people were talking about the need for more standards, the need for open, multi-vendor, interoperable solutions in the cloud. Everybody was trying to solve it independently with their solution provider or vendor community. And we heard these discussions, and we heard a lot of like-minded, companies from different parts of the world, companies from different vertical industries, different sizes, but you started talking to them, and they were all talking about the same things and solving the same challenges. And we helped introduce a group of like-minded individuals. And also Intel, as technical advisor, we led a lot of industry initiative and SIG groups over the past 4 decades, so we have experience in this area. Okay. We brought them together, and it started as just 10 steering committee members, the likes of Deutsche Bank, Disney, Marriott, Terramark, BMW, right? Big companies, right. And now it's grown to this over 300 members, and some of the largest OEMs and ISVs as well.
And so the output of what those guys all those people are doing is they're creating, not so much, they're not a standards body, right? But they are trying to create guidance back towards vendors, back towards the open source community as to where they'd like to see consistency.
Yep, they are saying, for my IT environment, these are the requirements that I need over the next 1 to 5+ years. And by setting these environments, they do it through usage models. They're vendor agnostic, but they give a roadmap for what solutions need to be delivered or what standards need to be developed. So their goal isn't to create standards, but to go work with those organizations already developing standards to either accelerate those in motion or to fill in gaps, as well as working with the vendor community to do the same.
One of the things that I like about the Open Data Center Alliance is that, for the most part, you see a lot of organizations out there today, particularly around standards, that are very vendor-led. And if anything, what I like about ODCA is that it has enterprise end users, right, contributing to this discussion, which I think at the end of the day is really where standards should be coming from. Obviously, it's a collaborative initiative, but I think it should be end user led and not so much, an entire organization of vendors.
Okay.
Good point, because even as a technical advisor, we don't get a vote. I mean, it's really funny. I've sat through a lot of meetings, and I'm not allowed to really represent an Intel opinion or vote. It is truly driven by the board of directors and a pure enterprise focus. That's very interesting and unique.
Follow up to that is, if you are a vendor or you're leading one of the, say, open source projects of some sort, how do they engage with it? Is it simply, here's kind of our recommendations and standards from ODCA, please develop to that? Or is there a way for them for vendors or vendor panels of vendors to sort of understand not only what's been written but the nuances behind it? How does that interaction expand between the two sides?
Yeah, it's very collaborative. Right now, there's about 14 vendors who joined the solution provider community, and those vendors represent 90+% of the virtualization market, 2/3 of the major hardware players out there, leading management, network, and storage vendors. And what those do by participating in the solution provider community, they get involved directly in the work groups. They contribute directly to the usage model development. They help the work groups make sure that they're implementable, practical, maybe address gaps or challenges they haven't thought of yet. So it's a very collaborative process, and you're going to see a lot more of it going into 2012, because now that the Open Data Center Alliance is a year out and they've released a lot of these requirements, their 2012 focus really is on turning these into practical solutions and getting them adopted into enterprise and service providers. So the vendors obviously are pivotal in this role.
Okay, and you'll see more of that kind of exploding in 2012.
Absolutely.
I want to throw this one out as well, and I'm kind of thinking about this as a follow-on. I've had the opportunity to do some things with Raejeanne's organization at Intel, and one of the questions that came up in a conversation I was having with them at VMworld was, the difference between cloud in, say, North America or maybe some of the developed countries, and I know, Raejeanne, I know you were over in China recently. Vanessa, I know you get a chance to talk to customers from all over the world, and Seema, you as well. And what are you guys seeing as the difference between, say, the traditional markets or the U.S. market, North American, and over in China? What's different there in terms of cloud computing, in terms of demands they have, and how it ties back to things like standards, or even maybe we'll talk about big data here with Vanessa's background. What's different in the rest of the world that you guys are hearing?
What I find interesting is, once again, there's especially when you contrast like the U.S. and China, very different but very similar. What I think a lot of people don't know is some of the world's largest public cloud, in the world, are in China, right? China has Tencent, which is their Facebook, actually has more users online than Facebook does. But we all think of Facebook as the world's largest social media cloud. They have their own search company. They have their own Amazon equivalent. And these companies are huge, with sometimes 2 to 3x the growth rate of even the largest U.S. cloud providers. And so from a technology perspective, they're very advanced and forward, and they're solving, once again, a lot of these same problems. And there's been some incredible now collaboration between the U.S., the largest cloud service providers in the U.S. and the largest cloud service providers in China. I think where we differ, though, is on when it starts going beyond those public cloud providers into the enterprise. There just isn't as much, from my opinion, enterprise adoption or private cloud build-out yet in China, as there is as the focus among the, you start to look at FSI or healthcare, and a lot of these companies are looking at cloud as a key enabler. So very similar and very different.
I'm actually going over to Europe next week, and have been working on some of my presentations, because there's a lot of interest around cloud storage, for example, and also a lot of interest around what does a hybrid architecture look like for enterprises over in France, which is where I'll be going. And I think one of the things that we see is that there are similarities for the U.S. market in terms of, there is a lot of interest. They may not be as far along as some of our forward-thinking enterprises are, but they're certainly starting to make some decisions around what they should be doing and how they should go about it. So one of the things that I've noticed that differs entirely from the U.S. are sort of the regulatory compliance issues around data. Because when you think about it, the U.S., if you need data to stay within your local region, which would be the U.S., then you can do that. But in France and in Italy and in Western Europe overall, or in Europe overall, it's challenging, because a lot of the different countries have different regulatory issues and have compliance requirements. And so getting them all on board, or really understanding where their data is going to be and where they'll be accessing their resources from, is a challenge still for a lot of them, and something that we don't really necessarily experience here.
Right, they're sort of like the 50 U.S. states, except they're all different rules, different regulations, and with the economic stuff going on in Europe, with it potentially blowing up or changing it, all that may become more and more difficult. So it's good stuff for good stuff for people to be thinking about in terms of where you're going to run your applications, who you're going to partner with, how transparent they're going to be.
And I think one of the bigger challenges is that service providers. So, a U.S. service provider can have a data center in France, can have one in Italy, and one in the U.S. And let's say the French enterprise wants to use this particular service provider, they really have to clarify where their data is going to be, right? And I'm not sure if U.S. service providers are really, or just cloud service providers in general, are really, I don't know if aware, but are really clear about what kind of SLAs they deliver in terms of where your data is located. And I think there's still a lot of gray area around that.
Okay. Well, that's actually kind of a nice lead-in or plug for something that Aaron and I are going to do probably after the new year. We've got an attorney, a lawyer, who with expertise in sort of cloud computing, but also how that relates to international laws, is going to come on probably after the first of the year. So if people are listening to this and they start having questions and they say, "Hey, I'm a multinational, or I have to do business in different parts of the world," start getting your questions ready. we'll send them over to us, and we'll make sure we get them covered here after the new year. Let's talk for a second about the other big buzzword these days, which is big data, or the other big buzz phrase. Vanessa, you had a chance to speak. You had a fairly large speaking opportunity at Hadoop World. Talk about what's going on in that space beyond the buzzwords. What problems is it solving? How much do people understand it? Are we kind of in a reasonable way, or is 2012 the year when everybody starts kind of figuring out at least what it is and why it makes sense to them?
I did have an opportunity to speak at Hadoop World, and it was really interesting because, I think a lot of this area has been dominated by the large web scale companies, so Zynga, Netflix and the like. And so I think those environments are very well versed in being able to handle big data. This is sort of where they grew up, right? What I think the challenge is today is traditional enterprises who are sitting on legacy infrastructure, who have done IT a certain way, for a long time, are very challenged today with being able to all of a sudden re-architect their infrastructure to be able to handle big data. And is it solving a problem? I think to some extent it is, right? There's a ton of new data coming online that a lot of enterprises today want to leverage for their competitive advantage, right? And so this new type of data is very valuable for enterprises in terms of the business. However, being able to store this data, process it, analyze it, it requires a new type of architecture, and it's something that a lot of traditional IT environments don't really understand yet. So when you have new techniques like Hadoop, it becomes, a challenge for them to learn something new. I'm sure we all know that, IT is challenged today with, having the right skills in place to be able to learn all these new technologies. What I do think will happen is that it'll be a combination of things. I think in 2012, enterprises have woken up to this new data that they can leverage. And so the business is really going to push IT to implement the right technologies in place to be able to analyze and process all of this data. And so it's going to require a whole new skill set. I think we've seen, the term data scientist, and I think that, that role encompasses a number of different areas within a business, not only IT and not only the business, but I think it covers both sides. And that's something that I really like to see going forward.
Raejeanne, help me with this. What's Intel's role in big data? I mean, typically people think of Intel as always being on the leading edge for big CPU-driven applications, the next CPU. You guys are doing a few different things. Obviously, there's a piece that Intel's involved with this open compute platform, which maybe helps drive the cost down. I know there's been discussion in the industry about trying to do lower power CPUs. But from your perspective, if somebody asks you where does Intel play in this? What's your role?
And where to start, really, because in the data center, we look at it from multiple angles. There's the scale up side of big data and how you manage the large databases and our, kind of coming from our mission critical product line. Then there's the scale out view of it, and some of these emerging workloads like Hadoop, right, that may do well in a distributed environment with maybe lower performance but more scalable CPU environments with different I/O or other platform requirements. So our goal, obviously, in the data center is to make sure that whatever the use is, that our silicon technology has been designed for it for the outset. So we're doing a lot of forward planning as well as a lot of software optimization and characterization, and our microserver platform was really designed into this segment saying, hey, some applications will do better with kind of this highly dense one-socket environment, shared infrastructure to reduce power and cost, but still giving you a lot of node power across these one-socket environments. So, that's one end, but also Intel's more than a data center company. Most people know us for what we enable in laptops and mobile devices, and we're going to be in, your car, your tablet, your smartphone, digital signage, a vending machine, right? And all of these intelligent devices in the world are collecting data or generating data. And it's that end-to-end data analytics opportunity that I think we're really excited about, and not just from a business perspective, but man, it can change the world. It can deliver medical information to remote countries or remote villages via kiosks, and it can deliver education to more environments. And this kind of cloud and end-to-end analytics and big data opportunities, the analytics side of it is just really exciting, I think, and transformative.
One of the things that I wanted to add on to that as well, I think one of the bigger issues right now facing a lot of our clients is the fact that because they have this legacy infrastructure in place and they're looking to leverage it, how can they tie their infrastructure to something that could support a Hadoop cluster, right? So I think it's the argument between, does it require commodity infrastructure or does it require specialized hardware? And I think today, really, a lot of enterprises who are sitting on their infrastructure want to be able to leverage that. Even if they are going down the road of implementing commodity infrastructure for a lot of the Hadoop workloads, they still want to be able to leverage the existing infrastructure. And so that's really a challenge. And I think there's a lot of management companies out there today who are taking a look at this and helping enterprises to understand how they can what they should be leveraging specialized infrastructure for and what they should be leveraging commodity infrastructure for.
I'm going to wrap this up on sort of two questions for everybody and answer whichever one you feel comfortable answering. So, we talked early on about where women in technology were going, the leadership they're going. Obviously, the three of you are doing very, very interesting things, but there's a whole bunch of other women that you guys network with, that people know. Who do you sort of look up to in terms of helping you say that's the type of kind of role model, whether it's in the industry or outside?
Other than the ladies on the call, who I do look up to as role models, I have to say that I am very impressed by the Marissa Mayer from Google. She is something that embodies both the technology side, so her background is obviously in technology, but she also encompasses the feminine side of being a woman in technology. And so I think for me, when I look at future role models and hopefully, we see more girls joining the technology ranks, this is really the combination that I'd like to see. I think for a long time, technology has held a stigma of people in technology being geeks. And I don't know if that's necessarily the case anymore. I think there's, women out in the field today who are representing from both a technology side as well as a feminine side.
Raejeanne or Seema?
My company, I'm also pleased, is following in the footsteps of some of the ones you mentioned earlier in the conversation, and I have really amazing role models within my company. Our CIO, Diane Bryant, and our CMO, Deborah Conrad, are women that I've been following my 2-decade career, and they've been there before me. And these women are intelligent, accomplished, they've earned their positions, but they're also charismatic and dynamic and incredible speakers and passionate about, the business and our company and our people. And both of them happen to be mothers. And, I kind of look at them and just go, geez, how do you do it all? But, those are two women I'm watching really closely, and I'm proud of them. I'm proud that they represent our company, and I'm trying to look and see how they do it and make it all work.
Seema, what about you?
Yeah, so I really, I think I'm lucky to know such wonderful women as Vanessa and Raejeanne. Raejeanne's a mother with twins, and I had a conversation with her earlier this year, and we were talking about kids, and she was like, you can have a great career even if you have twins and stuff. So and Vanessa with her vision, plan, and focus mantra that she has, I also have, I think I'm lucky to know several, accomplished women during my career at IBM. Lauren States, who's the CTO for Cloud at IBM. Several other technical leaders within IBM, Rosalind Radcliffe, for example.
Okay, very cool. Aaron, you want to give Claire? You want to give Claire the last word? What's cool for 7, 8, 9, 10-year-old girls with computers these days? What does she think is fun?
Well, she actually just ran down the hall.
Ah, okay.
She's been so she does a lot of gymnastics, and she actually was doing gymnastics down the hall. So I'm starting to question how sick she really is at this point.
Well,
I think somebody may have gotten a free day off from school, but if she makes it back between now and when we actually get to the end of this podcast, I'll bring her back on.
Okay. All right. Well, since you're now officially no longer going to win Parent of the Year award, you want to take us home and finish the show up?
Sure, absolutely. So, first of all, for all of the guests, Vanessa, Raejeanne, and Seema, where can people find out more about you? Is there blogs, Twitter? Where can people find out more about what you're doing and what you're following?
So I have my own blog, and I also write on Cloudcast. I'm on Twitter as well as Seema J, and on LinkedIn. You can find me on LinkedIn as Seema Jethani.
I have a blog at blogs.forrester.com. I am Vanessa Alvarez 1 on Twitter and can also be found on LinkedIn at Vanessa Alvarez.
This is going to sound like a repeat, but I'm not as consistent of a blogger, but you'll find them on intel.com and even one on Cloud App. But best way to hunt me down is contact me at Twitter at Raejeanne S. And the tricky part is spelling my name, but I'm just Raejeanne S. And then I'm also on LinkedIn.
Very cool. Thank you. All right. You can follow us on Twitter at thecloudcastnet or reach us at thecloudcast.net, where you'll find links to the show and show notes. You can leave us a comment, send us an email, or details on how to stream us on Stitcher. And Claire is now back. Say goodbye, everyone.
Bye.
Bye, Claire.
Bye.
Bye.
All right, everyone. Thanks for listening.